Change is scary, especially so when the changes to the core mechanic of your game. They're called gacha games after all. It's in the name. Blue Archive recently had a controversial gacha update with Fest 5.5, so I thought I'd throw in a take. We'll start with an explanation of exactly what changed, and then we'll jump into the analysis as well as addressing some of the common concerns. Let's start with what hasn't changed. The rate up probability is still 0.7% per normal pull. Pulls still cost 120 pyroxene apiece, or 1200 for a set of 10. The latter guaranteeing you a 2-star or better on the 10th slot. For each banner period, you also still get a 100 ELF bonus for each banner's first rate up pull. As with the old systems that did change, the old system was based around what is commonly called a spark system in the gacha world. Accumulate 1 point per pull and exchange them for a rate up of your choice. These were exchanged in a special shop menu at the player's desired timing, so they could be stacked to whatever number sensei pleased. Perfect for farming Twitter engagement with a screenshot of no rate ups and 800 recruitment points. One defining characteristic of the old system is that you couldn't bring the recruitment points to the next banner set. So if you had 150 recruitment points after pulling on a banner set where you only cared for one student, you would have to make a choice by the end of the banner's duration. Do I pull to 200 and complete this spark? Or do I abandon these 150 recruitment points? If you chose to abandon them, they only mostly went to waste. Each recruitment point not finished as a spark would become a keystone fragment. So in that example of 150, you would find 150 keystone fragments in your mailbox after the banners changed. It's also worth mentioning that the recruitment point pools weren't shared among every recruitment type. The archive-style Recollect and Encore recruitment also used recruitment pools, but they had their own separate counter for points that didn't mix with each other or the normal recruitment points. That's the basics of the old system. So what's new, Doc? The overarching difference is the switch from sparking to what is commonly referred to as pity in the gacha world. You're no longer accumulating points that can be exchanged for rate ups. So the button that got you to the exchange menu for that is gone. Instead, you're given this nifty meter tracking the consecutive number of times you've failed to pull a rate up. These failure milestones act as a ceiling to bad luck, lowering on average the number of pulls it takes to reach a rate up. To highlight this change, they've rebranded the name recruitment points to recruitment charge. You get charged the same way you got points. Pull, 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 pull. How do you use it? Automatically. This meter has 2 milestones at 100 and 200. Reach that number of failed pickups in a row and you get the corresponding pity event. Fail the standard 0.7% rate up checked 99 times in a row and you get a chance at salvation. It's a 50-50 opportunity in place of the 100th pull. Heads, you win the rate up. Tails, you lose but kinda still win. It's not a complete loss since the other 50% is still a guaranteed 3-star spook. This can be any student that's in the current spook pool, which you can check in the summoning rates menu. Like during Fest, that would include both the Fest student whose banner you're not currently pulling, as well as the unretired Fest spook pull in addition to the usual permanent students. Collect 199 bad luck recharge and your 200th pull will turn into a guaranteed rate up for whatever banner you're pulling on. That's it? Yep, that's it. You had to pay 120 for that, by the way. Redemption happens by the pity events completely displacing the 100th and 200th pull when you roll. Surprisingly, there's no ceremony to the charge events within the summon itself. It just replaces the relevant slot with a pink envelope. Kind of like how the 10th slot of a 10 pull has different probabilities than slots 1 through 9. If you weren't keeping tabs on the meter, you might not even notice triggering the pity events. So better keep track of your meters to know when you were helped by the invisible hand of John. It will displace the guaranteed yellow or better on the 10th slot too. So offset pity events landing on an even 10 by doing a single pull if you want to micro-optimize your Eligma. The previous system's spark occurred separately to the act of actually pulling, so there was no such concern. The charge meter resets every time you hit a rate up, so you can't stack charge to infinity like you could with points. Doesn't matter how you do it. Whether it's the normal 0.7% chance from any pull between 1 to 99 or 101 to 199, or if it's the new pity events at the 100th and 200th rate up miss. Get a rate up from any of those and it's an automatic trip back to 0 charge. It has to be the currently selected rate up banner, so spooked inactive rate up banners won't trigger the reset. One nice thing is that immediately after you get a rate up from any of those, you immediately start charging towards the next milestone with the remainder of your pull set. Like if you got a rate up on the 4th slot, the remaining 6 slots would give you 6 charge towards the next cycle, assuming you didn't hit another pickup on one of them. You can repeat this 0 to 200 pity cycle until you've gotten all the rate ups you came for. You run out of pyro, or you give up for some other reason before a clean rate up end. All of those are plenty good options now because recruitment charge doesn't expire between banner sets anymore. Since nothing is expiring anymore, you also don't get keystone fragments in exchange for points at the end of banner sets. Another thing to note is that there are separate charge meters for limited and permanent banners. They function exactly the same way other than accumulating only when pulling the respective relevant banner type. So for example, I ended my Fest session with 4 limited recruitment charge. And then when the banner changed to the current casual Senna and friends, my recruitment charge there became 0. This is because the pulls are split, not because anybody made a mistake. I haven't pulled on any normal banners since the new system started, and so naturally my recruitment charge for permanent banners is at 0. My 4 limited recruitment charge is safe and waiting for the next limited banner. The periodically run, recollect, and encore recruitment that handles selection like Archive will also be operating with limited recruitment charge as well now. The OG Archive has poetically retained the Spark mechanic, so if you get nostalgic for Spark, there's still one place you can go to relive those good memories. One final very important thing. While your recruitment charge won't be expiring between banners, there's something new that will. That's the cumulative pull rewards you get at various numbers of pulls. Most of the rewards are mats, including a few Eligma and gifts. But by far the most important rewards are the Rebate 10 pull tickets. They occur at 70, 130, 150, and 170. And then again at 270, 330, 350, and 370. So effectively 40 pulls per set of 200 and 80 per set of 400. These rewards get automatically tacked onto the end of your ELIF readout on the pull results screen, so you don't have to do anything to get them. And you can use them immediately on your next pull. These get used after free pulls from Fest, so you can effectively stash up to 3 tickets from pre-Fest limited banners, assuming you pull 80 times on the first day. Also note that these tickets have an expiration date. However, they're not that short of a duration either. The ones from Fest lasted for 40 days. I'm not sure if it's always going to be consistently this duration, but at this point, I'd imagine it'll keep a duration long enough to carry pre-Fest limited banner tickets to actual Fest at least. After pull 370, there are no more rebate tickets in the cumulative rewards. Just some repeating rewards that do include a purple gift and a Ligma. This affects the value of Uber whaling, but that talk is for a little later. While we're still talking about tickets, there's one more net negative to tickets that we'll have to mention. The affectionately dubbed scam tickets no longer contribute points to the guarantee system. You used to get 1 recruitment point when using a selector or single pull guaranteed 3-star. That's no longer the case, unfortunately. This is speculation, but it might have to do with the pity rolls displacing instead of being their own separate events like Sparks. There's nothing to displace if you're doing a 3-star guaranteed limited student that only had 1 roll with modified rates to begin with. This brings into question what they're going to do about the traditional scam ticket that was a 10 roll which turned the usual guaranteed yellow or better into a single spook. They might just quietly discontinue it. So those are the specs for the new system. But what do the changes mean in practice? Let's start with the carryover of points between banners. This sounds good on paper, and if you're the type to randomly throw 10 pulls at banners for fun, you might get some benefit out of what would have become orphan recruitment points. The reality for the discipline sensei is that the current advice of only pulling when you can afford to guarantee a pickup hasn't changed. So the cases where you would even use carryover become more limited, because pulling to completion would mean going back to 1 to 9 pity points at the end of every session. For the diligent sensei, it mainly benefits scenarios where you're going to pull a set number of times. For example, the free 100 pulls for the limited banner before Fest. You might get super lucky with the rate ups and end up having free pulls left over. You'll still have to spend the pulls, but you can at least take the pity with you to actual Fest. Or if you wanted to pull a round number like 400 on Fest hoping for dupes, whatever the pity ended at could be taken to the next quarterly limited banners. They should also be a little help if you end up with an expiring Grand Assault ticket and have to throw it at a random banner. At least the 10 pity doesn't go to waste if you manage to miss on an undesirable rate up. We also have to talk about the automatic reset whenever you get a pickup regardless of the source. The previous system could be seen as a bonus for reaching 200. It doesn't help you at all on the way there, and instead simply adds to whatever luck you experienced on the way to the spark. If that was bad luck, it became a consolation and a floor for the number of pickups. If you were already winning big, the winning got to win 1 more on top of what they already had. The new system's pity reset mechanism turns this on its head though. Each rate up becomes an individual journey, since you go back to the starting line with each rate up obtained regardless of source. This can be admittedly unintuitive for someone who's gotten used to sparking, because the understandable immediate reaction is to think, I have to do this twice? There's no way these odds are better. If you're making an earnest effort to understand the new system, it helps to re-examine what the goal was in the first place. The goal was never to spark. It was to get the most rate ups for the lowest price. While sparking did this with waypoint bonuses that could also act as bad luck ceilings, pity milestones do this entirely with bad luck ceilings that reduce the average number of pulls required to get rate ups. The 50-50 at the 100th failure immediately takes half of the rollers out of their current pity cycle. And for the people who lost at 100 to 199 as well, there's the pity at 200 that acts as the actual hard ceiling for a given cycle. However, the nature of the 200 mark has changed, in that it no longer has the dual function as both a bonus and a bad luck ceiling. Because getting a rate up and then reaching 200 in the same cycle is now impossible. Reaching 200 is strictly a notice of defeat now, rather than a towel and a bottle of water at the finish line after a budgeted 200 pull dash. It's purely pull inefficiency that is to be avoided if at all possible. Which, since it's luck, you can't. And finally, the rebates. Getting additional pulls along the way both reduces the average of paid pulls and also effectively reduces the ceiling, since they contribute recruitment charge that gets you closer to 200 pity. If you collect all 4, you're at worst paying 160 for a single rate up. And for a 400 set of gross pulls, that's 80 rebates for 320 paid pulls worst case. Something to be aware of is that these pulls aren't free. You still have to reach these cumulative counts with paid pulls. And like how you didn't always reach the spark point at 200 in the old system, you won't be getting all the rebates with every pull session. It wasn't always a good idea to finish the spark then, and it's not always a good idea to go to 170 for rebates now, especially when you don't actually want more rate ups. After the one at 70, the remaining 3 are rather deep into a 200 set at 130, 150, and 170. This is past the 100 pull mark, which at that point, 99 failed pulls and a 50-50 have already given you a 75% chance of getting sent back to the start line. So if you're just pulling for one student, on average the only ticket that you'd get on the way there is the first one. Whereas if you were going for 2 rate ups, the 180 gross pulls on average mean you'd be getting all 40 rebates the first cycle most of the time. Okay, and so what? It's the question you probably care most about. Is the new system better? Better being defined as getting more rate ups for the amount of pyros spent? In most cases experienced by the average Blue Archive player, yes, it's better. Let's talk a bit about the numbers. The old system has pretty straightforward math for the expected value in a 200 pull scenario. It's 200 times 0.7% for a 1.4, and you get a +1 at the 200 pull mark if you make it there for 2.4 rate ups total. That's 83 pulls per rate up on average. There's one major assumption to realizing this number though, which is that you are always pulling in 200 pull sets. People who have pulled a solo permanent student and had to throw away 100 to 150 recruitment points can tell you, that's not always the case. So the real answer is somewhere between 83 and 143 depending on your blend of abandoned and completed sparks. The math for the new system is more complicated, since you have to account for the possibility of resetting at any point with a regular pull rate up. But the answer it comes up with is 90 pulls per rate up before taking the rebates into account. This answer scales and is accurate enough, as long as you assume pulls are always to the completion of a rate up. Therein arguably lies one of the major strengths of the new system. Its use of recruitment charge is efficient compared to throwing away recruitment points. No charge goes to waste because there is no longer a concept of orphaning points between banners. And then the rebate tickets come into play. This is variable since rebate tickets come at specific cumulative pull counts, but assuming you're operating at close to the averages, you'd get to reduce a single rate up at 90 gross pulls by 10, courtesy of the recruitment tickets at 70 gross pulls for an average of 80 paid pulls. If it was 2 rate ups at 180 gross pulls, that would pass the 170 pull mark, allowing you to claim all 4 of the rebate tickets. That brings the 180 gross pulls down to 140 paid pulls, giving a 70 paid pull average per rate up. Average pulls per student isn't as practical as comparing how the systems perform in real scenarios though, so let's go over a few. Starting from the basically indisputably better case where you pull for 1 rate up in a banner set. Have you ever been rolling a permanent banner or a rerun where you only wanted one of the students? Like if you only wanted Kiki and not Reijo, who turned out not to be so necessary. Or only the newly added swimsuit Nagisa if the rest of swimsuit Hyakuryodan didn't interest you? This one's a clear winner for the new system. I don't think I've seen anyone against this case yet. The ceiling comes down because worst case you'd get 40 pulls rebated on the way to 600 for a 160 pull rate up. Ultra bad luckers rejoice. The rest of the normal folks will get the benefit of the rebates they picked up on their way up the unluck curve. Naturally, the biggest improvement dragging down the average is the 50-50 at 100 pulls, which in one swoop turns 50% of the people who hadn't already won by 99 pulls into rate up havers. The combination of normal pulls leading up to it and the 50-50 puts you at a 75% chance to get a rate up by the 100th gross pull, of which you paid for 90. A vast improvement over the old system's 47% equivalent 90 paid pulls, or even the existing anchor point of 100 paid pulls that used to put your odds over 50%. The best part is that there's no awkward situation where you got the rate up at 150 pulls and have to worry about what to do. I don't care that much about more elifs to the other student, but do I push the extra 50? Now you'll just be back to 0 and have to soberly consider if you really want to climb the mountain again. In this situation, I'd say the system became indisputably less predatory. So pulling only 1 is a win. But what about wanting 2 rate ups in 200 pulls, you ask? Yeah, it was inevitable we'd reach the contentious part. 2 rate ups in 200 pulls is the standard of not losing at the moment after all, considering modern Blue Archive is rarely just single pulls anymore after Double Fest became a thing. You can be pulling 6 banners per year by just going for all the limited students between 2 fest sets and 4 limited sets. The aspirational standard of the old system was pulling 200 pulls and hoping that you get at least 1 rate up on the way to the spark, and then the spark would grant you the other student. Under that method, you had about a 75% chance of getting at least 1 copy on the way to 200, which would guarantee you a congratulatory second at exactly the 200-point mark. Since you were relying on the spark for the second copy, this also meant that the odds of getting 2 before 200 were also pretty bad. Without the spark's help, you only had a 41% chance of getting 2 before the spark. Now let's add in the new system before rebate details were fully known. As the skeptics that we ought to be, we started with 0 pulls assumed. At the time, there was still the possibility that rebates didn't start until some ungodly number of pulls. As you can see, there are a number of regions where the systems overtake each other. The new system without rebates achieves much better odds of getting both by the 199th pull. And then at the sacred 200 pull mark, the old system pulls ahead sharply. It stays ahead until 290 pulls, where the new system maintains its lead to the 400 mark. With this kind of mixed bag, it's more understandable why some people would get upset. That's only a hypothetical that didn't come to pass though, so we're obligated to compare against the reality that does have rebates. With 240 pulls, 40 courtesy of the rebates along the way to 200, you come out ahead at every single point after the first rebate ticket comes in. Even the sacred point of 200 paid pulls is slightly ahead. If you just want to spend an even 400, you'll get to pull 80 bonus times from the rebates for a total of 480 pulls. Not the worst thing you could do during Fest, even if it will hurt your efficiency slightly since those last 80 don't count towards rebates. Or if you have to pay 320 to hit 2 max pities, you can pocket the 80 you saved with the effectively lowered ceiling. The 50-50 might not feel like they're helping you if you run into a bad streak, but in the long run, it should do its part in lowering the average pull rate. And worst case, you come out at 320 pulls with 2 spooks and 2 rate-ups, versus the old system's nightmare 400 pulls, no spooks, and 2 rate-ups. Well, I still don't trust 50-50s, you say? And that's why we're going to flip into that rabbit hole. One of the most common sticking points is the very polarizing existence of a 50-50. No 50-50s in my gacha games, please, they say. The Gacha Collective has apparently been scarred, tarred, and traumatized by the very idea. So let's explore a few reasons I see cited for not liking it. Pattern 1. I always lose the 50-50. Or I lose the 50-50 more than half the time. If you think your luck is that bad, please, keep the receipts. If you can show a long-term record of significantly less than half wins, you can have your sympathy and worst luck in Blue Archive award. Nobody has ever taken me up on that deal. For most people, it's more likely that they're achieving close to the rated 50-50. They just remember the losses more vividly because of negativity biases and loss aversion. Pattern 2. It's not actually a 50-50 chance. These are generally the people who don't trust the gacha company to give us accurate rates. I don't really blame these people because with a little sleuthing, Nexon really does own the notorious patent that adjusts rates based on aspects of the user, like how many friends you have. Ouch. I'll leave the link to the Korean patent database if you want to check it out yourself. In fairness, I haven't heard any updates on them actually using it yet. But even then I have to ask, if you think they'll cheat with the new system, what makes you think they were being fair with the old system? Again, please keep your receipts if you suspect the rates aren't fair. Pattern 3. I can't tolerate the idea of 50-50. There are people who plain out won't trust the idea of a 50-50. If you're open to trying, I want you to try reframing it. The 50-50 isn't what you think it is. Don't think of 50-50. 50-50 is the bad man. Instead, convert it to single pulls. A single pull has a 0.7% chance of hitting the rate up. So from a chance to lose perspective, each roll is a 99.3% chance to lose. To calculate how many of these would be equal to a single 50-50, you would keep multiplying this chance to lose against itself until you reach 50%. That gets you to about 98 pulls for matching a 50-50 chance. You're not pulling a 50-50. You're concentrating the power of 98 normal pulls into one. 98 pulls which only let you win the rate up once to be precise. Yes, with none of the freak cosmically improbable upside of getting 98 rate ups in a row. But life is about making assumptions. Hold on to that idea, because we're going to tie it into one of the commonly cited examples of how the old system is better. Some people mention the scenario where you get the rate up at exactly 200 pulls. I could have sparked and gotten both students, they say. New system sucks. The thing is, by the time you've finished your 103rd pull in the new system, you've already exceeded the chance of getting a rate up in 200 normal pulls with the old system. That 50-50 equaling 98.67 pulls earlier was to illustrate this. That 200th pull you just did? That was pull 298 in the old system. In other words, for the last scenario, let's talk about pulling for dupes. The answer is the new system gets better expected values from the first rebate ticket up to just about 4 sparks. An intuitive way to think about this is comparing 83 pulls per rate up at max efficiency 200 lot pulling in the old system versus 90 pulls per rate up in the new system with an 80 pull discount from the rebates. If you want an alternative to getting your ELIFs from dupe rate ups, you can also buy the newly introduced limited duration ELIF packs that become available after you pull a rate up. They're good value for the dolphins. That's all for the scenarios. Let's continue with some points about rebates. I saw a few people trying to exclude rebates when mathing out the new system, and their reasons seem to fall into 2 major categories. 1. rebates are going away. There are people who say that the rebates aren't permanent, that they'll just be nerfed into giving fewer pulls or outright yeeted to the nether. Which, if you just want a concession that it's technically possible, sure. That's live service. The game can change. I don't see why they would get rid of them entirely though. Rebates were announced with the new Gacha system, even if the number or placement of pulls wasn't immediately communicated. I personally don't see any indication that they'll be going away anytime soon. Another point I've seen brought up is that they might have been gauging the reception to decide how many rebate pulls to give. This is one of the more reasonable grievances in my opinion. It's conspiratorial, but the suspicion about the information lag is understandable. I'm not going to say that's undoubtedly what happened, but they really could have been dialing the rebates based on reception. The final official result we got is acceptable though. So as long as they don't try to revise it to a mathematically disadvantaged system, I personally don't feel like pursuing this point. If someone leaks the memoirs of Mr. Nexon twirling his villain mustache while detailing this plan, sure, I'll hop on the Condemnation Express. That's not to say I'm a full-blown apologist for the new system. In the handling of the release, I mainly didn't think the communication was great. Hand-waving through slides during live streams is pretty par for the course, but not having the amount and timing of the rebates from the start wasn't a great move. Especially not when this information is the difference between a side grade with trade-offs and something better across the board. The time lag was an invitation for suspicion. Another thing I want to touch on is the feeling of pulling after you've been denied a second 100 pity. I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it a fault of the system, but it's a novel kind of despair when pulling for 2 rate-ups with the old 200 paid pull budget mindset. In the old system, all you needed to do was hit 1 rate-up in 200 pulls, meaning every roll had a chance to be a hero. The new system, however, has a point where you feel like all hope is lost. If you make it to 140 pulls without getting a single rate-up, you're probably not going to make it, because that's the point where your opportunity to get the second 50-50 within 200 paid pulls slams shut. Past pull 140, you pull 10 by 10 for what feels like a foregone conclusion. The individual rate-up ceiling at 200 isn't a celebration, it's just officializing your loss. The only thing waiting beyond is another 100 pulls to the next 50-50, so there's a decent chance that you're going to 300 gross pulls. That's the 250 paid pull mark. Even a win along the way to 200 doesn't feel like a win. You're probably not going to get a double hit in the remaining pulls to 200, and there won't be any pity milestones to help you either since that win sent you back to 0. Rationality tells you to accept that this happens and instead appreciate the absolute ceiling being a lot lower at 320 paid pulls instead of 400 now, but it still hurts getting into a position that feels like it has no hope. We've been conditioned for pulls 100 to 200 to be the zone where miracles happen, where 1 rate-up 10 pull can snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. So with the new system turning this stretch into no man's land, it almost feels like something dear was taken from us. Let's close this out with a bit on monetization. A lot of people feel Blue Archive is getting greedier. I don't disagree, and I feel like the monetization additions are becoming more apparent. It's become especially noticeable after the release of UE60 and the ELF bonuses that are given to pickups only. You have the new paid dailies like the Battle Pass and Work Assistance paid daily on the main menu. You've got a literal go look at the cash shop daily. You can buy selectable ELFs for permanent students. You can even buy furniture sets. And the new Gacha system feels like it's the next step. Just not because it costs more to get rate-ups, but rather because it encourages you to roll more through incentivizing YOLO and incremental upsell. Carrying over pity incentivizes you to randomly throw rolls. It doesn't go to waste. I can just continue next time. It also has the rebate tickets strategically placed at deep points in the 200 pull cycle. If I keep pulling, I can get pulls for half off. Not to mention the superliminal messaging. Hey you, buy ELIFs. Okay. That's the new ELIF packages that blast at you right as you get one of the rate-ups. Immediately after you get out of the pull result screen. Only lasts for 3 days. It's good value for the target market, but man does it feel like you're getting sold. All these little calls to pay don't feel great, but since the base system got improved by my estimate, I'm still willing to mentally block out the ads for now. John's putting on a slow proverbial boil, and I don't know if I'm just a good frog or he's a skillful chef. Long story short, the new system should benefit most people who just care about getting their waifus faster in the long term. I hope this helped you understand the nature of it a little better. If you still don't like it, that's fine too. I only hope that you'll be respectful in your interactions with the people who want to give it a chance. Anyways, thanks for watching. Keep it civil in the comments.